you to answer a number of questions that we've come up with. And participating in this Zoom interview is our members of the Minneapolis chapter and the West Metro chapter. We have, I believe, we have 7 questions that we are going to be asking. And we're going to alternate between myself, Kara Latovsky, who is the political chairperson, and Diane Solinger, who is the chair of the West Metro chapter. Now, before we begin, I would like to give you an opportunity to tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh boy. Okay, I will try to keep, I talk a lot. I'm going to admit that. No. So thank you for having me here today. My name is Witt. I am serving as my first term as sheriff. I've been in this profession for 26 years. Yes, I started when I was 2, in case you were wondering. Um, but it's interesting that I am in this role. I grew up in South Minneapolis. I graduated from Minneapolis South High School. I don't know if we have any Tigers on here, but
Oh yeah. Not
uh,
me, but my daughter.
Um,
Thank you.
but frankly, I was that kid who actually grew up afraid of law enforcement, didn't feel safe with law enforcement and things like that. And that was because there were a lot of things going on in my home, which invited law enforcement into our lives quite a bit. Um, my original degree was actually chemical dependency family therapy. I worked for a nonprofit like Pillsbury Neighborhood Services and Reuben Lynn Family Services, working with families that were like the one that I had when I grew up. And then one day I took a tour of the jail. They talked about how they needed women, specifically people of color, to represent the people that were being detained in the jail. And literally, I just filled out that application, never thought about the field, but it was there where I had to have more interaction with law enforcement. And my highlight went off again, and it said, hey, I want to be who me and my siblings needed to see. I want to be that person that we needed in our communities. And so far, that tour has been a 26-year sentence, as I said. I am a wife. I have 2 adult daughters and 3 of the most precious grandchildren. And, people, with the challenges that's facing, even my husband's asked, it's like, you can go do so many things with the various degrees. Why do you do this? And I'm going to tell you simply because I care. And I do think that's something that we're missing. Yes, you can be compassionate and empathetic and still hold people accountable. But, as I think about my journey through this field, I know that I am living my purpose and I'm where I'm supposed to be. So, hoping to become the sheriff for another 4 years. And
Okay.
I hope that was enough. I don't know if you wanted any more background than that. I apologize.
Well, we'll give you a chance to do some closing comments at the same time. Our first question is regarding the DFL values. Now, you affirmed your support in your questionnaire responses for the DFL values. Now, how do these values show up in day-to-day law enforcement decisions?
Well, let me say this first. It's interesting because people think that if you are a Democrat, you are anti-law enforcement. I could tell you that being in this field and being a lifelong Democrat, it's I've been proud to show people like, yeah, no, we do support public safety. But when I think about values, and as I said, becoming a teen mom and thinking about all the systems out there that actually helped me become a successful person and a successful mother as a teen mom, those values of putting humanity first and making sure that we take care of everyone, being humble, but then leading by that example too. And then there's also the whole part when we're talking about public safety. One of the things that sorry, one of the things that I like to connect people to is this profession we call law enforcement. That's just one act of what's in this profession. When you're truly about public safety and you have democratic values, you realize that public safety and public health are intertwined, and leading with those things and saying those things and actually showing people that it's all intertwined. It's not just about enforcing laws and locking people up. It's about what resources are available. Some of the things that I'm very proud of in the jail, to know that we only used to give education to people who are between the ages of 18 and 20 and part of Minneapolis public schools. Now we have a whole program called Hope, where we're not only offering GED, we're offering um, diplomas, as well as post-secondary classes, life skills. The people in our facility are a part of our community, and we should always want them to come out better than what they were when we received them. But that is a part of those democratic values, taking care of our community, no matter where they're at. You have to learn to meet people where they're at. And I don't think we have enough people in this profession that lead in that fashion. I could tell you too, also being a Democratic sheriff, sometimes it's lonely as a sheriff. As you know, we have 87 sheriffs in the state of Minnesota. And there's things like where I just did not fit in. Like, for instance, with Representative Green, where I went with her to the Capitol and I spoke about gun rights and safe storage. And there were some of my fellow sheriffs that were not happy with that. And that's okay, because I did what I believe is the right thing for our people and especially our children.
Thank you for that. Now, my
If I
second,
ever get long-winded, can you guys just wait, put your hand up? Because sometimes I can go on if you let me. Yes, do that. Or you
that's
can do what my
fine.
granddaddy does. Mhm.
Okay. How do you ensure deputies uphold protections for immigrants,
So,
LGBTQ plus residents, and marginalized communities?
yes. Well, again, it's when I think about my experiences, knowing what it feels like to feel like you're not heard or you're not seen or you're lesser than a human, that's something you never forget. So when our policies here are that we do not cooperate with any kind of immigration enforcement. That is the policy. As I was the major before I was the sheriff, I was the one who pushed the previous sheriff into doing that, and so that's one of the things I would like people to know. I think it's also interesting. You might find it interesting to know that because of my policies of not cooperating with immigration enforcement of 87 sheriffs in Minnesota, I'm the only one being sued by the Department of Justice because of my policies that are in place. Um, our deputies, as far as updating the policy, making sure that they're clear on what we do and what we don't do. I think there's this idea too that as a sheriff or as a leader, while I am responsible for everyone here, I can't be every place every time something bad happens. What's important is I make sure that I follow up and I hold everyone accountable for making sure that they follow policies and procedures as well as our statutory mandates. But I want to be clear that it is our policy that we do not cooperate with immigration enforcement in any way, and we have not. When Our Holman was here, people heard him repeatedly say that there's been a unprecedented number of sheriffs that are non-cooperating. Hennepin County Sheriff was not one of them. Um, Something else I would like to bring to the attention is when it was me as the only sheriff was standing alongside of maybe 30 something chiefs when we were calling out ICE for their racial profiling at the Capitol. So, it's not good enough just to stay behind your desk and say nothing, but making sure that you are talking to everyone and making sure that the expectations are crystal clear.
Thank you. Kara.
Excellent, Martha. Thank you so much. It's really great to have an opportunity to talk with you and ask you these questions. This next one is kind of related to public safety and a little bit related to immigration that you talked a little bit about. But so it is the Sheriff's Department was strongly involved in responding to Operation Metro Surge, for which it received both praise and criticism. Could you describe this work by the Sheriff's Department and touching on what you think worked well and what you would change?
Yes, I can tell you there were a lot of moving parts. I think before Metro Surge happened, I was actually in St. Louis Park talking to a senior living community, and they were talking about what's going on around the country. And I hate to tell everybody that I think I jinxed this. I said that could never happen here in Minnesota, and then it
Mhm.
happened. Um, but now it was like, okay, there wasn't any time to plan for anything. We had to stay ready for anything and everything. I went to roll calls talking to our deputies, making sure, because we know we have people that work here that have different views too, but making sure that we have one goal, and that is upholding our obligation to providing public safety. When Metro Surge was happening, we did get bad comments as well. But I think about a conversation I had with a woman when I was explaining to her the what and the whys, what we were doing. And she goes, I think you have a perception problem because after talking to you, this makes sense. And I thought about that. And then so I go to my communications team. I was like, well, how are we pushing out information? And my communications person, who's great, she's like, it's when you get your information from only one place, it's hard to see everything. It's hard to know everything. So, making sure that we put on our website, what do the various uniforms look like? What should people expect from our deputies? For example, we do not ask immigration status no matter what. It has nothing to do with our job. And so making sure that that was clear. But then also, when we respond to public safety issues, like I'll give you the example. It was actually right before Metro Surge on Bloomington and Lake. Bloomington and Lake, that incident, that was an investigation that started with the Hennepin County Sheriff's Office because the Attorney General asked us to investigate a human trafficking case. It was my detectives that had the victims who talked about being afraid for their families because the cartel was threatening them.
Hey, we are not taking questions.
And so,
We're not taking, we agreed to that, Kara.
sorry. Um, and so when that happened, the perception was what we did not know because we do not work with federal government on any
We're
immigration
not taking any
deals.
questions. Good.
We did not know
Okay.
that they were going to send in the force that they did.
Okay. Okay. Just a
Our
minute.
job is to protect everybody despite race, religion, profession. Our job is to protect everyone and uphold the laws. So, while I understand what some things where it looked like we were cooperating, it caused us to do a lot of defining, so we didn't have to do as much defending. And that's what we did, defining, not defending, and explaining because we know what things look like, but it simply wasn't that. I'm sorry, I can't hear
Yeah,
Kara.
no, I'm sorry. I had muted myself for a phone call. So I just have a follow-up question that you might have already answered, but it is how do you partner with other law enforcement agencies, both local police departments of the different cities in the county, and also at the state and the federal level? Not
Okay, thank you.
necessarily on immigration stuff, but all stuff.
Thank you for that question, Kara. So the role of the sheriff is to provide peace in the entire county. The sheriff is considered the executive law enforcement official of the county. Our job is to collaborate with all of our agencies within Hennepin County as again, my overall arching statutory mandate is providing peace in the entire county. So when I look at us as like when there's an agency, especially smaller agencies, I should say that we're the largest sheriff's office in the state as well. If they need help, we go and help. There's been several times where we've actually went into contracts with certain cities like Brooklyn Center, Brooklyn Park, and Golden Valley because their numbers of police officers was very short. And so we went into those cities via contract to provide public safety. I've been asked quite a bit, like how much resources are going into Minneapolis. We're data intelligence driven. And if there's more things happening in Minneapolis, then yeah, we will have a bigger footprint there. Again, going back to that overarching statutory mandate of the sheriff, which is providing public safety in the entire county. We do not have the option of saying, no, we're not going to help. I hope that answered your question, Kara.
It did.
That,
Thank you very much.
okay.
And I did want to say that I saw somebody raise their hands, and we're not going to be doing follow-up questions. We're going to just do the pre-prepared ones. So thank you. Handing it back to Martha.
All right. Diane, you're going to ask the next question.
So I don't have the final version. So you guys just go ahead, continue on. You're doing great. Just keep.
Okay. All right. Then I will do the topic on leadership and management.
We gotta go back together. Want to come up with her? Okay, now come to this spot, it's know what to do. Dude, only cares about himself. He doesn't
Could we mute, please? All right.
I muted her.
Thank you. Okay, for leadership and management, you've highlighted again in your questionnaire responses increased diversity in your office. Now, what changes did you make to recruitment, hiring, or training?
Ooh-wee. It's interesting as we've talked about the last few years. One of my priorities was recruitment, as well as retention, as all law enforcement agencies, not just here in Minnesota, but across the nation, were struggling in that area, specifically after 2020. Last year, I successfully got to full staff of what I'm authorized to have. Now, that number changes daily because people are getting smarter and retiring when they can. I'm so jealous. But, anyways, that's another story. But making sure that I'm looking at our candidates, just a quick story. When I started here at Hennepin County in 2000 and I left in 2004, the reason I left here in 2004 is because when I wanted to be licensed here at this sheriff's office, and they passed me over several times. And I asked for a meeting to say, why am I getting passed over? I didn't understand why they would not pick me. And I overheard that supervisor, he said, exact words, I never will forget them. She has family members that come to jail. She knows people from the community that come to jail. We can't trust her. Now, if you fast forward 25 years later, what I'm hearing from the community is they want people from the community. When you're part of your community, chances are when you have the largest jail, you're going to know people that are there. But thinking about those concepts, or thinking about as somebody who grew up in a very broken home, when I was being backgrounded and being shamed for being a victim, not somebody, not a suspect, but a victim, knowing what that feels like. And so, one of the things when I came back here as the major, I said, I want to look at applications. And I was told, backgrounds don't lie. And I'm like, backgrounds don't lie, but a backgrounder can be very objective. What is the story? So again, taking those experiences and how do I apply it? And trust me, our personnel division, I'm pretty sure they were tired of me. They would never tell me that, but they were because you push back on that stuff. When we're thinking about some of the young people coming into this field, and you are expected to go out there and police people with all of these problems, right? All these issues, these challenges. Some of these young people don't have that experience. And so we have to make sure that we have people with those different experiences. We can't say second chances and we expect people to have this perfect life because there's no such thing. But not being afraid to say that to people. I remember starting in this field and I would not talk about my background because there was this idea that you had to fit in. And as I explained to our staff, best agencies are going to be those that have people that represent our entire community. Women in leadership, especially in law enforcement, we need a lot of help there. I am a part of what, I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called the 30 by 30 initiative, and that's getting your female staff up to 30% by the year 2030. Right now, we're at 21%. And so making sure I focus on that. And again, having that balance, making sure that we do look like the community that we serve, that we have people with different lived experiences. And guess what? You're not supposed to hide who you are because we're making sure you create that environment where people are talking about not just their similarities, but their differences too, because that's what makes us better.
Thank you. My next question is part of the same. What is a leadership decision that you regretted, and what did you change afterwards?
This one's very fresh, I can tell you. Mask. Prior to Operation Metro Surge, we did not have a policy about masks. And to be honest with you, there are certain situations in which our deputies are, if they're undercover, will have masks on. But when I saw that video of one of our deputies doing a traffic stop with a mask, that should have never happened. And now, actually, one of the things I also have is a community advisory board. So we have a policy, and I use my community. I will be taking that to my community advisory board because they represent different parts of the community of Hennepin County to see if there's anything else that we need to add, change, or edit to that. Something that I tell law enforcement leadership all the time is we have to remember the longer you've been doing this, sometimes we can forget how the community sees us. And so making sure that I not just say make the decisions as us here in law enforcement, but sharing that with our community to say, okay, what are we missing? What do we need? And using that time. That is the purpose of having that group. And so, but the mask one, yep, it's like, I didn't think I would ever have to tell somebody you can't wear a mask during a traffic stop. But it apparently I do, because that's what happened, and I don't agree with that. And so I, I I can't say I really regret not having it because again, we've had masks all, and it's never been an issue until Operation Metro Surge. Um, but you have to be willing to like say, okay, you know what? And I'm sure there's going to be some of our deputies that aren't going to like it, but apparently we need those things in place so that they know that building community trust is something that is that that we have to do. One of the provisions of that policy too is like if you are in an undercover status and somebody requests to see your face, it's going to be in policy. You must show them your face. So, but I don't want to say it's going to be an absolute no mask policy because there are certain situations in which they would need them. But this is why, again, we're going to take that to the Community Advisory Board and say, okay, what are we missing? What do we need to add, change, or editor, if you will?
Thank you. Okay, the next question, Kara, did you want to do that, the police reform?
Oh my God. Sorry
I'm
about
bad
that.
at reading
Yes,
lips.
I do want to ask questions. On your questionnaire, you said that police reform is needed. If you could just talk about what specific reforms have you implemented and what do you think remains undone?
Thank you for that question. So one of the things I would like to add to my resume is I also am an adjunct professor. I teach juvenile justice and corrections. Part of the reason I still do that is one, I don't have any time on my hands, I'm sure you can imagine, but I think it's really important having that influence on new people or young people that are coming into this field. You know, as I said before, it's not just being the sheriff, but being a woman and a Black woman in this field can be lonely sometimes. But it's what I had learned is that we have to be able to create those environments where people are able to talk and learn from each other. And so when we think about like some of the policy changes that I made here, um, I can tell you guys stories for days, but there's this one that just sticks out in my head. We had two people who quit. One was a white male and one was a Black male. And I wanted to know why they quit. And so I called them up, and the white male, he talked about how he just had a better opportunity and he was going to be moving further away from the county. The Black male talked about issues that he had here with leadership and things that were being said, the passive aggressive stuff and being treated differently. So I took that back to the jail leadership team. And it's interesting because the next meeting we had, I get asked by my jail leadership. They said, well, everybody wants to know, why did you only call the Black deputy and not the white deputy? And I'm like, well, what makes you think that's what happened? I called them both and they're like, you did? It's like, yeah, there were no issues with this person, but there were that issues. But can you please explain to me, what did I do to make you think that way? Right? Putting myself in that position, I want to hear from them because again, they have this perception and you have to be willing to have those difficult conversations with people. And I really think that that comes from the top down, not being afraid to have to talk about those things and ask people what their biases are, whether they know they have them or not, and then call them out on it. Because that's the only way that we make things better. Our implicit bias training that we have here, we typically would have something that you do once a year online. I don't know what you learned online. So now with us adding a program, it's called Lexipol. So not only do our deputies, when they read, and this is also our detention deputies, not when they review a policy, they actually have to sign off that they acknowledge that they read it and that they understand it. Because when it came down to discipline things, people would say, well, yeah, I knew that or I did not know about that. I want that accountability piece. And so, it's thinking about, again, the biases that exist out there and making sure that you have a system in place to make sure that people aren't just checking the box, but they are acknowledging that they will follow those rules and that there is a trail. So when it does come to disciplinary issues, that you can do something about it. It is very difficult in this field. I'm not sure if you're aware when it comes to termination, because we have people that can come in and basically overturn a chief or a sheriff's termination. And so, but documentation is one of the biggest things that we need to make that happen. We don't need any more bad people in this profession. And so I am very adamant about making sure I have systems in place that make sure that people aren't just reading policies or overlooking them and then claiming that, well, I didn't know. Accountability has to be a part of this profession.
The follow-up question actually feeds right into that. Can you give us an example of when you held an officer accountable for misconduct?
Yes, I can. I just got to think of what's not an open investigation.
Right. I guess that's the question. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, because that one could be very difficult. Let me just start by saying this, and I'm sure an example will come in my head. As I just stated, it's very frustrating knowing that you can have either union or mediator come in and overturn your termination policies. We do have a system here where when somebody is terminated, I will tell you the last one was, I believe this one isn't open anymore. We're supposed to be held to a higher standard, and we had somebody who was forging documents to get tuition reimbursement. And, like I said, I believe, there's different circumstances for people, but when we brought you in, that was your opportunity to own it. And this person continued to not be truthful. And actually, there were two people that did it. And the one who did not own up to it, he was terminated. He's fighting it right now. I might have to give him his job back. But, if you're going to do that, then how can I trust you to be on your own out there in the community? Um, Another one where something, again, I didn't say it explicitly, but like my growing up, being around a lot of abuse and somebody being a victim, I have that soft heart for people that are victims and making sure that we're looking out for victims' rights. Um, when there have been times where we've dealt with our deputies in a domestic violence situation and things like that. And, even when we were short staffed and people would be like, we can't afford to let another person go. I don't want them here. We will figure it out. We can't do that. And again, it's a lot of litigation that goes into that and a lot of what I can and can't do. But I make sure that people know that it's not going to be tolerated. And if I can't trust you to be out there on your own, I don't need you. I would rather work with less good people than a lot of bad people.
Great, thank you. There's one more question under this category, and then I hand it back to Martha.
Okay.
How do you balance accountability, rehabilitation, and community safety?
It's a good one, Kara.
I think
Thank
Martha
you for that
will.
question. Um, you know, you I always lean on moral compass. What is somebody's moral compass? There's going to be times where we face things that are very difficult situations and short times to make decisions. But you have to be comfortable with who you are. You have to be comfortable with making sure you don't stray from that. Like one of the first things that I had my command staff promise me is that they wouldn't let this job change me. I don't expect to be perfect unless you're one of my daughters. If you ever meet my daughters, you guys, I'm perfect, by the way. Okay. I don't expect to be perfect, but you know what? Making sure that you own up to when you make a mistake is very important. And I'm actually one of those people from the school of we also learn from our mistakes. So you also got to think about intent. What is someone's intent? And so that balance is something that you lead with. I've had good leaders, I've had bad leaders, but making sure you are comfortable with yourself. And if you aren't comfortable doing something or saying something, you probably shouldn't be doing it. you know, um, and just leading in that fashion. But it goes right back down to that moral compass, being authentic, being transparent. All of those things actually intertwine to bring all three of those things in balance. And again, that humility of saying, sometimes I'm going to mess up, but it's not going to be for the wrong reasons, such as incompetence or greed or selfishness. I understand the job that I took on, which is being responsible for the public safety in this county. And I take that very serious, and sticking to that moral compass is very important to me.
Thank you.
All right, our next has to do with budget, staffing, and priorities. And I'm going to limit this to 2 questions because I think they kind of merge. What are your top funding priorities? And what trade-offs would you make if resources remain limited?
Thank you for that question. And that's a very difficult one because I am actually dealing with that right now. Um, so my budget, which is about $160 million, 80% of that is for staff. When I think about all of the aid that we've had to provide throughout this county, right? It's through the entire county. You need staff to do that work. In the last 12 months, we've had 2 staffing studies done, independent staffing studies. One that says that I need another 60 deputies in the jail. Another one that says that we need another 38 telecommunicator 911 dispatchers. The needs of this county have increased. And so in order to make sure that I am sticking to that statutory mandate of providing public safety in the county, I got to continue to advocate for what we need. When I think about reform and bad policing, that increases, or bad policing increases when you have people that cannot be proactive. So when asked the question, what am I willing to give up? You know, some of the things that are not statutory mandates are community engagement. I have a community engagement team that is out there in the community trying to earn that trust every day. Again, using that lens as a kid of thinking that the people in uniform who are supposed to help you are not coming to help you. That's non-negotiable to me. So, but it's not a mandate. Or the programs that I talked about that are in our jail, that's not a mandate. I think it's interesting when we talk about statutory mandate because we're not talking about what's mandated by us for humanity. And so it's hard to put numbers on that because those are some of the questions, you know, with our budgetary restraints that we're asked right now, are what am I doing that's not mandated? Programs in the jail are not a mandate. Community engagement teams doing DARE programs, again, that's not a mandate. And so it really puts us in that position of how can I be creative? So one of the things that we have been working on the last 4 months is that I've had to let go of what we call our limited duration staff. That's oftentimes a lot of our retirees that come back to help with like backgrounds and gun permits and things like that. I had to let them go. But guess what? The work still has to be done. And so now there's that balance where I'm looking at uniform people doing things that we could have civilian staff do. So I am in a very bad predicament. When it says, what am I willing to let go? It would be those things that I would call that are necessary for humanity. Again, programs, community engagement, our programs with our Explorer programs. You know, that's kids 14 ages 20, or our volunteer deputies who are helping on the water and parades all the time. Those are not mandates for the sheriff to do. But I would argue that's a demand that our community wants to make sure that they have that closeness with their law enforcement agencies. So it's very difficult.
I think you've answered my next question, so I'm going to pass it on to Kara. Thank you.
All right. We're finally getting to a question specifically about seniors, considering we're at the senior caucus. So what specific programs or strategies are in place to protect seniors from crime?
Thank you for that question, Kara. So we have that very community engagement team. They go to senior living homes living spaces, and they're talking about the latest scams that are out there. They're handing out the terror bags. They're taking questions. We never pretend like we know what everybody's concerns are. So we always want to make sure that we have our ear close to the ground, like, okay, what is going on in your community? I can tell you, I think I gained a friend in Edina. This woman who called me, she was surprised that she got me, but she had been scammed out of nearly $100,000.
Ooh.
And I took down her information as a sheriff. I still like to think I got my cop skills, right? And I called this place back, and then they were trying to scam me. I mean, Steve Harvey was coming here to give me all this kind of money and stuff like that. But getting people, our seniors, feeling comfortable enough to tell the stories. We want to do more stories on social media because we know people connect better when they hear the stories from people. But one of the barriers that we're having is that the sense of shame stops people from doing that. One of the gentlemen who I wish he would tell a story, he is a retired chief. He was scammed out of well over $200,000, and he doesn't want to talk about it because as somebody who came from law enforcement. But we have to come up with a program where people are talking about, because people connect better that way. I was out in Champlin at a senior living place and talking to a woman who used to be a Hennepin County social worker who was also a victim of fraud. And there was nothing we could do for her. Her money was gone. But I think one of the things passed at the legislature, getting rid of those Bitcoin things, that will be helpful. Working with our local stores, such as like Cub and Walgreens, telling them to watch out for like seniors who were there getting like a number of gift cards, because that's usually one of
Mm.
the scams that they
Mm.
do and things like that. But it's educating all of our staff. We also do what we call the file of life for our senior community, which is magnets that we ask people to put in their cars or on their refrigerator, because we explain, like, if you're ever in a way where first responders have to show up, we want to make sure that we're doing what you want to do. And so it's a lot of educating, but again, gaining that trust by not just showing up and never to be seen again, but making those connections. And it's really important to do that because the amount of fraud and scams out there are ridiculous. And so we have to make sure that we have that two-way communication so that we can tell people, so we can help put out there what's the latest scam, and then we ask people to share it.
Are there any other programs that aren't focused on fraud and scams? I
The
have no
file,
idea like what they would be like, but I wonder if there's other
no,
ways
it's
of thinking about
the
like how the sheriff supports seniors and safety.
well, does bingo count? Because we play bingo too in some of our senior living places. Um, we did it wasn't this past winter, the winter before last. We've had some of our community engagement people. We had put something out asking people like who needed help with like shoveling when we had some heavy snow or something like that. And just being that plug and play. Again, not saying that we just do one thing. We try to
Mm.
respond to wherever we can. And again, that's what I would say is one of those humane things to do, yet it's not a statutory mandate for us to do it.
Right. Okay. I
All
think I
right.
think that's it. She kind of covered the last two bullet points there, Martha.
Thank you, Kara. Thank you very much, Sheriff Witt. At this time, if you have any kind of summary that you'd like to make or any closing statement that you'd like to make, here's your opportunity.
Well, again, thank you all for giving me this time and space. I will tell you that it has been a very difficult last 3 years, but the thing that keeps me going is the passion. As somebody who grew up in this community, went to school in this community, I am a part of this community. I don't look at myself as just as somebody who polices the community. I am a very community-oriented person by nature. And I'm hoping that I have the opportunity to serve Hennepin County for yet another 4 years. And what I can promise you is that I will always be my authentic self and doing the best job that I can always. Um, and I will always strive to be perfect, even though I know there's no such thing.
Thank you. Now, Kara, I wonder if you could just summarize the next steps for the sheriff and how we will proceed?
Sure. So we will deliberate and develop a recommendation for endorsement or not, and then we bring it to our membership, and then that goes to the state. So then the state DFL Senior Caucus has to actually act on it. The hope is to have that process all done so that you could use this in the DFL endorsing convention in mid-June. But you will hear from the state next.
Okay. Well, thank you very much, Sheriff Witt. And you have a most pleasant day.
Same to you all. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Okay. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.